Welcome to my brand new podcast, Yes, We Grieve Too, with myself, Richard Geldard. Within this podcast, I'm going to explain to you from my own experiences working as an animal communicator and animal medium what the animals have actually spoken and shared with me from their perspective on how they can struggle with loss, change and death as well. One of the most common questions I'm asked in my work, alongside do my animals love me, is do my animals grieve? And my answer is without question, absolutely yes, they do. To understand the grieving process in the animals that we share our lives with, first let's look at the animals in the wild and the well-documented moments with animals such as elephants and dolphins. In elephants, not only do they grieve and stand as a group by their dying and passed over family members for days sometimes, but they also have very similar mourning patterns to us as humans. Yes, believe it or not, elephants cry, and they bury their dead and pay tribute to the bodies and bones. Just like us. For them, this is part of the grieving process that enables them as individuals and as a group to make peace and let go too. When they lose a member, their grief is clearly not simply a response to death, but it is also an emotional sense of loss and companionship. So much of this can be said for the animals in our lives too, our horses, our dogs and cats, to name but a few. Dolphins are widely documented as mourning the loss of their loved ones as well. Observations of dolphins have been carried out for many years with scientists observing their behaviour in loss and grieving. Dolphins have been observed in times of loss to alter their behavioural routine significantly, sleeping less, acting listless, agitated, and returning on many occasions to the body of their lost family. I have myself read on many occasions of female dolphins that have been spotted with their stillborn and deceased calves, carrying them on their backs for many days as they come to terms with the loss and letting go. None of these emotional responses are any different to what the animals in our lives also feel. The only difference with animals in the wild is that they can fluidly make the natural choice to go through the grieving process because they do not have us as humans deciding how they live or how they will react. A sad truth and something for all of us to be aware of. You see, caring for an animal is not just about their general health. It's about the experiences. It's not just about what they eat and how for many based on how they make us happy. Caring for an animal should also be about their emotional health and us doing all we can to ensure that they are supported emotionally in all that life challenges them with, including loss, change and death too. You see, grieving in animals is not just about death of their companions and family. It's also about change, separation, and being moved. It's about understanding they too, just like you during those times, will need support. And it's about acknowledging naturally within their species the importance to allow them to grieve. None of us like to think anyone or anything is suffering, and as humans we do all we can to try and change this. But sometimes it has to be said that by doing this we can actually sometimes do more harm than good. We need to look at why we feel we need to change something for the animals in these times. Is it really for the animal, or is it for yourself that you make the decisions you do? So often horses, when being euthanized, are taken away from their herd or field partners. And as much as I understand, and they do, that as humans we are trying to make it less traumatic for both the horses that are healthy and well and the horses passing over, should they not be given the opportunity to say goodbye as much as we are, much of the time, with our loved ones? To take a dog to the vet to be euthanized is traumatic enough for us. But what about for them and the other dogs left behind? You will invariably return with a lead and a collar and nothing more. And where will the other dogs have had chance to mourn and understand what happened this way? It's a tough one, but we have to start understanding that animals have a process too of grieving to go through, and that they need to be able to experience this just as the elephants and dolphins do. Of course, to every species there are differences to how they grieve, in as much as horses are herd animals, and therefore in the wild they would be around the dying animals and would be able to witness the death and to be able to come to acceptance in their own way in time. But how can this happen if they're never ever shown their companions once past and given time with them? Dogs are pack animals, and you and all other animals invariably become their pack. And for them, this is family. And so again, taking one of their family members away to be euthanized and not even showing them their body passed over is always going to be difficult for them. Your dogs will grieve far more without being given the opportunity to understand and say goodbye. I know this because I work so often with animals that have been confused, and they've started to display all sorts of behavioural issues that the human has asked for help with. And it's simply much of the time just that they've not understood how deeply important it is for the animal to grieve as much as it is for the human. Grieving is a process for all of us, for all life. And I've been shown that grieving occurs in all animals. Because all animals, like you, are sentient beings. What about cats? Some would say that a cat would perhaps not be a species that would be as bothered by loss of another, perhaps because they do not live their lives in a pack or pride mentality like, say, lions or dogs. But this is simply not true either. Cats are deeply emotional and sensitive as a species. And again, for them, they see all within them as family and have their own personal connections. And therefore they have emotional connections. And thus they will grieve through change, loss and death as well. For animals, death is actually understood so easily because in all animals, there is simply no fear. It is us as humans that fear death, and therefore we believe that animals would feel the same because we are constantly putting our feelings onto them. It's simply not true. There is no fear in death with animals. They understand it, they accept it, and they have remembered every time they have passed in every life they have known. They simply know they continue on. As humans, we don't have the belief that they do. Not all of us anyway. So what can we do to help our animals in our lives more with loss, change and grieving? Let's first look at horses. Horses. We would do anything for our horses, wouldn't we? We love them, we adore them, and we try to give them everything they could possibly need. It's important to acknowledge that change is hard for them. Leaving friendships behind, moving, say, to another yard or field is deeply impactful for them. And the same is for loss through passing over of their friendships as well. Talk to them. Spend time talking to them, explaining to them the situation, not hiding it away. Horses, like all animals, know everything we say, think and feel. They're just looking for you to trust in them enough to share it all. So, share it all. Tell them what is going to happen. Do not hide this away. If your horse is to pass over, explain what is going to happen. Sit with them in that space, supporting them. Don't be afraid of your emotions and never hide them. For the horses, like all animals, they need to experience your emotions and how you feel in this situation to understand how much they meant to you. Give them time with their friends or bring their friends to them to spend time. They will already know what is happening. But it's important, just like the elephant or dolphins, that they have time physically to connect and start the process of letting go. Understandably, it's not the easiest situation when you're having your horse euthanized. And it's not always possible to let the other horses see this happen due to constraints in many yards and emotions that could be felt or seen by other humans. But where you can, if it's possible, I would say they have shown me they would like to be given that opportunity. We have to make these situations more balanced. About us, of course, but also about them. These animals in our lives have already lived a life in captivity of every decision made by a human. And for them, at least in these moments, we must be more aware of what they want also. If it is not possible for the horse to be part of the dying process, then it's important to at least, if you can, take them to the body and allow them to sniff them and feel them. To feel, to have the chance to feel what has happened and what that animal meant to them in ways you may never understand fully. As well as supporting them in the moment, it's so essential to try and understand the grieving process that they're going through. Just like the elephants and the dolphins, they may create unusual behaviour through grieving. They may come across depressed, listless, and struggle with the herd and their other friends at that time. Understanding and supporting this, and to keep talking to them and giving them this time without trying to change or hide it from them. With the animals in your life, it's all about transparency. It should always be about this and being who you are and speaking your truth without hiding situations away just because it's easier for you. Think about when you sat with your loved ones, say at the hospital in their final days and moments. How important was this for you? And how important was the support afterwards? The animals are no different. In dogs, for example, I always feel the greatest experience for the other animals left behind as much as for the dog passing over where you can to allow them to pass at home. Allow the others to be present, that all family members are present, all that had a relationship with them and all their fellow dog friendships that they live with. It's so important to allow this, so vital to everyone involved, human and animal, and for the animal passing as well. Sit with them, soothe them of course, but allow the other animals, their friendships to do the same. Dogs are perhaps one of the most emotional and sensitive animals. Most family-orientated animals we as humans can have in our care. And in packs, they live with their mothers, their grandmothers, their aunties, their father and siblings. Yes, they live for family, and therefore they will grieve like any other family. Moving home or change or death of a human is just as hard for them as well, and it is still going to create a process of grieving for them. You may be glad that a partner has moved out of the home. You may be glad that you've moved home. But does this mean that the animal, your dog, your horse, your cat is? For them, they have their own individual experiences with your partner, their own individual experiences with the home that provided security and safety for them. And therefore, it's just as personal to them, just as it is to you. I hear often of dogs in split marriages and how they get shipped to one and then to the other person each week, or experiencing the partners arguing or being unkind to each other in front of them. Would this happen in front of your children? Perhaps to some, but I do feel we would be far more mindful around children than we actually are a lot of the time around our animals. Breakups and loss of humans to our animals is as upsetting to them as it is to us. We must talk to them and explain and support them with what they present in these situations, but to be mindful to not try to take away from them their experience, perhaps because it would ultimately make us feel better. We must do what we do to make it better for them, understanding that there is a natural process that they must walk through as well. Ask yourself, would wild dogs move from home to home like we do as humans? Probably not. They like stability, and this brings them security. And we all know how it can take time to adapt to new surroundings. So we must be mindful of this for them as well. Too often we overlook or dismiss the emotional hurdles and feelings that animals have, and this has to change as humans. We are becoming far more understanding of mental illness in our own species, but when it comes to animals, it's so easy to treat them as if they don't have feelings and struggles. I can tell you they do. And it's usually due to humans more than anything else. And the baggage that we put onto them, the expectations that we put onto them. And what about cats? Deeply physical and knowing and intuitive creatures. They need this understanding too. Just because they may not show it on the outside, it does not mean that they do not feel it on the inside. If we were not to show them their passed over friends and just took them away never to be seen again, could you blame them if they disappear off for days and don't eat or start to urinate around the home? Yes, cats can internalise so much of how they're feeling. They are quite an independent species, and being so stoic for them serves them well. But when in captivity, it is essential we acknowledge their emotions and feelings too, looking at how we deal with the passing of their friendships and how we can support them too will help them so much. I don't feel there's a single animal that I have worked with that does not have the capacity to grieve or hasn't grieved in some way or another. And I believe what I'm shown, that all species, every species will grieve in some way. It's so important that all the animals we care and love are understood so much more. To acknowledge that their feelings and emotions are real, just like yours are during grieving, and that as much as you may be struggling, so may your animals too. Your animals are unconditional love. They are a blessing in your lives and a gift. And they support you through all your needs, your feelings of being unlovable, lonely, situations of disabilities, health issues, mental health issues. when you're happy, when you're sad, they will be there trying so hard to make you feel better or to help you understand yourself better. But yes, sometimes they need us to support them as well. I can tell you that when you are grieving a loss in some way, they will be too. Yet they will be putting you first because ultimately you will be leaning on them and needing them for support so much more in these times. And they will, without a second thought, be right by your side, loving you, healing you and supporting you because they recognise your struggles. Perhaps we can do the same for them when they need us the most too. There are many books and articles written on how we can best support our animals through the process of their own illness and passing, and of those left behind. I urge you to seek these out and learn and understand as much as you can. If a female dolphin can grieve for her baby calf for days, carrying her on her back, then so can a horse for her baby foal, a dog for a puppy, a cat for her kitten, and also for that foal, puppy and kitten, for their own mother too. If an elephant can grieve a member of their family or friendship so strongly, then so can your dog, your cat, and your horse. And if change is difficult for you, then it might just be for your animals too. We all need someone, we all need something in those difficult times, right? And the animals are no different. And although we can support them as we do other humans through loss, we must always understand it is their own individual journey to experience, and to be aware of when we support that we're supporting and not trying to change or control the outcome invariably for ourselves. That we centre ourselves to the animals, respect them as individuals, as we should always do our fellow humans too. To find more of that unconditional love that we have within us and grow within it, to have the capability to live by it more and more. Namaste.